Today we start with the third element of the model of the mind. We introduced the model of the mind, then we took up self, thereafter collective unconscious, and we said in the collective unconscious, there is something called archetypes. And these archetypes are one of the central concepts in the Jungian world. So let us try to understand today, what do we mean by this word archetypes? How do they function in the functioning of the mind? How do they lead to pathology? And how do we handle them for healing while we do therapy? So let us start with the definition of archetypes. There are various definitions. One definition Jung himself gave is this. Archetypes are innate, universal predispositions that shape human experience, imagination, behavior, and symbolic expression. This is taken from Jung's work, Instinct and the Unconscious, 1990. So what does it mean is that one, archetypes are innate. They are there inside of us by birth. This is not something we acquire in interaction with the environment. So number one, archetypes are present in the collective unconscious. Number two, they are innate. Number three, they are universal predispositions. It's very important. They are predispositions, they are not specific entities. So the predisposition has to realize itself in experience. Predisposition does not mean it will necessarily realize itself. It is like the gene, that the gene, there is a predisposition, but the expression is dependent upon some factors. But just because the expression is not there, does not mean the gene is not there. Similarly, they are universal predispositions, meaning they are not dependent upon any particular time in history. Archetypes are not something historical in the sense they were present from 2nd century to 4th century and now they are not present, or they were not present before 500 years and now they are present. They are universally present across human history. That is third. Fourth, they are predispositions. They are not fully formed entities. And what do? They shape human experience, imagination, behavior, and symbolic expression. We'll put it again, we'll go back to model of the mind, it will be more clear. But let us just look at the definitions. Second definition, it's more of a journal definition. They are universal organizing themes or patterns that appear regardless of space, time, or person, appearing in all existential realms at all levels of systematic recursion. They are organized as themes in the unus mundus, which Jung described as though the potential world outside of time and are detectable through synchronicity. This is more of an academic philosophic language. What it means in simple language is that these are universal organizing themes in the psyche or patterns that appear regardless of space, time, or person. And they appear at intrapsychic levels, interpersonal levels, and also social levels. And they appear again and again. That is what is meant by in all existential realms and at all levels of systemic recursion. And they are organized as themes in the unus mundus, meaning there seems to be a Welcome, Bhavna. We are just starting with the definition of archetype.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, sir.
Good afternoon. So, archetypes are universal organizing themes or patterns that appear regardless of space, time, or person. As we said, it does not happen that archetypes were present in history from 200 to 300 AD and not present after that, or they are present in the last 500 years and not were present before that. So they appear in the mind, they make an appearance in interpersonal relationships, and they make an appearance in the social menu, and they make an appearance again and again. And they are organized as themes in the Unus Mundus. What does it mean? Last time we said one view of reality is that there is matter, life, and mind. Life emerges out of matter, mind emerges out of life. This is the linear emergence theory of single elemental, that the first elemental is matter. So the most primary elemental is matter. From matter emerges life, from life emerges mind. This is one view of reality. Now Jung has a separate view of reality. This is Freud's. This matter, life, mind is Freud's view. And therefore in death instinct, he goes in reverse. That the mind wants to collapse into the body and the body wants to collapse into matter, and matter wants to collapse into inertia. Because that is where from everything has actually come up. And it's almost as though death instinct is that force which is taking existence into a reverse gear. It is like unmanifestation of manifestation. Manifestation rolling itself back to its source. But Jung has a different view, and his idea is that matter and psyche are both equally fundamental. So Jung has a famous statement which says, psyche is a fundamental fact of nature which cannot be reduced to anything other than itself. Which means it is like you say substance is made of molecule, molecule is made of atom, atom of subatomic particles, and that is made of something else. Now at one level you reach something where you cannot reduce it any further. That is a fundamental fact of nature. So when you reach that level of elementalism, where you cannot reduce it to any further constituent, because the constituent you have arrived at is the fundamental fact of nature, Jung puts psyche at that level. He says matter and psyche both are fundamental facts of nature, and psyche cannot be reduced to matter. They are at equal footing. And then the idea is, are these two both expressions of some more fundamental element of which both matter and psyche are expression? And that fundamental reality he calls as Unus Mundus. One world. One source from which everything emerges. So his view is somewhat different from Freud's view. And there is a potential world outside of time. And this takes us to Plato. That the archetypal world is very near to Plato's world of potential forms. Like Plato used to say, you may see a square of 2 inches, you may see a square of 5 kilometers, but they are all squares. So there is some realm in reality where the square exists. And all the squares that you see in reality are expressions of that elemental form of square. Which means there is an elemental form in reality, and all other forms that you see are manifestations of that elemental form. And that elemental form itself is above space and time. It is above the history of human race. It is the essential world of forms, what is called the Platonic world of forms. So all that you see here in this world manifest, in essence, resides in its elemental form in the Platonic world. And the archetypes appear like those entities. The difference being, the Platonic forms are not motivational. They don't participate in evolution. They don't drive the human mind, but the archetypes do. That is the difference between archetypes and the Platonic forms. But the idea is very much similar. That the archetypes are universal at the same time unique. Meaning, I have a hero archetype, you also have a hero archetype. My hero archetype will tell me that I should become a Prime Minister of India. And somebody's hero archetype will tell him he should become the best doctor in the world. Somebody's hero archetype will tell her she should become the most beautiful actress in India. Now, all of us are driven by the same hero archetype. But the form that our hero archetype chases is different. So the expression is different, though we all the three are driven by hero archetype. So the hero archetype will drive Narendra Modi also and Albert Einstein also. But the object they will choose for their action will be different. So similarly, the wise old man need not only be a sage. He may be a wise old man of medicine. He may be a wise old man of geology. He may be wise old man of astronomy. But these are all specific manifestations of one generic archetype, the wise old man. Similarly, the princess, the moment one starts getting young, one becomes conscious and one starts dressing up. So the princess archetype is common to all young women, but the way they will dress up will be different. In India, somebody will put up sari and a makeup. In African tribe, they will put up some ornaments made out of boats. Now, both are driven by the princess archetype, but the way they want to look good is different based upon their environment and culture. So it is, in essence, the same archetype, but the expression is different. So it is universal and unique at the same time.
I have a question here, sir.
Yeah, please.
If we say this is very elemental, universal, so is this the reason why in the child's fantasy most of the characters have this archetypal personification?
Yes. Yes. And that is why they like stories which involve archetypes. Now, like any other concept, we may find strengths and limitations of this concept also. That many times children like stories of lost and found. That some child was lost and he was found again by his friends or his parents. So lost and found is a very common theme in literature as well as in children's stories. Similarly, the bravery of the child, the hero, that is also very common. So we see archetypal preferences and we see thematic preferences which are difficult to put into any one archetype. Both of them are true in children's stories. So while we may not be able to say with certainty that all preferences are archetypal, we definitely can say that there is a substantial component of preferences which are archetypal. That we see some substance in this, while it may not be an absolute concept. So then the idea of Unus Mundus, that Wolfgang Pauli, the theoretical quantum physicist, and Jung came together was, is there a common reality of which both matter and psyche are expressions? And the rest of nature also is an expression. And then what we can see is common patterns, not across only human beings, but across human beings and nature. That the same patterns reoccur across human beings, across the life world, across the material world. And all of these are somehow connected to some grand pattern for which the existence that we know exists. So we are now talking about a program of the universe, of which The program of life of an individual is just one component in that whole wheel. That just as we have a human program of life, every species perhaps has its own program of life. And the material world has its own program of life. And they are all subcomponents of a grand program of the universe, which springs out from one fundamental unifying reality of the unus mundus. Now, this is very near to Plato, and this is very near to Hindu spirituality. That from one source, everything springs out, and there is a design in nature. And when the design is accomplished, the yuga will be over, and a new yuga will start. And when the complete cycle goes, then the universe will be over, what we call pralay. And after many times this happens, you will have a complete annihilation, which is called Mahapralay, where the new universe will have fundamentally different laws. So in Pralay, we can still have a universe with the same laws again, but in Mahapralay, it's completely different. The fundamental laws themselves are different. So the idea, because once you get into design in nature, all of this will come very near to each other. So all theories which believe in design in nature will ultimately have a lot of overlaps. And because the Jungian theory is a design in nature theory, it's very near in many ways to the Hindu spiritual view of design in nature. Yeah, Bhavna, you're asking something? So there are three things that we have to look at in terms of archetypes. The first is they are structural roots of civilizational constants. Meaning, when you see something in the civilization across history which is constant and not dependent upon cultural diffusion, like let's say there's a tribe in Africa and I go there and teach them something. Now that is cultural diffusion. That somebody goes from one place to another and takes knowledge or beliefs or something. But if that has not happened, and yet we have constant things across without any contact, they are civilizational constants. And these civilizational constants, if we ask, why same stories are appearing in all the cultures? Why the same mythology is appearing in all the cultures? Why the same taboos are appearing in all the cultures? Why the same birth and death rituals or something near to that is occurring? Then we see these are constants which are not driven by environment where you live, but they are more inside out rather than outside in. And therefore we say they are structurally rooted in our psyche. That the roots of those social practices, beliefs are already in our mind. The outside is a manifestation of the inside. So much of what we see in society around us is already inside of us in the root form. Like Jung says, the blueprint of the tree is already there in the seed. Similarly, the blueprint of the society that we see around and our own life is already there in our genetic endowment. What Jung calls as the archetypes. So archetypes are motivational centers, meaning Jung puts them normally what other psychoanalytic thinkers will use the word desire. So if you ask any psychoanalytic thinker what drives any human thought, feeling or action, he will say desire. That desire is the primary source of all our thoughts, feelings and actions. So the fundamental point where we start is desire. Now, if we look at tantric psychology, desire will be distributed across the chakras. The root chakra will deal with the desire of survival and the desire to be rooted in this world, stability. And in affect terms, it will deal with fear, anger, and rootedness. Similarly, the second chakra will deal with sexuality, erotica, pleasure, envy, and some form of creativity. So desire is distributed. Different desires are placed in different chakras, and those chakras are the centers of those desires. And when we say the chakra is purified, what we mean is we are now free from that desire, which was located in that chakra. So what Jung does is, instead of dealing directly with desires, yes, please.
Dr. Vaidya, this also sounds very familiar uh, in terms of like the astrological archetype and the theory of karma in that sense. That
Correct.
we come into this life with certain appetites and certain desires and karmas that have to be played out. So, and that's coded in the genetic memory, and then you're born where, in a lot of Indian schools also say that, and it's interestingly is there in the Vedic astrological schools as well as the Western as evolutionary astrology as well. We
Right.
come into the right, environment to play those out.
Correct.
Um, I had heard that somewhere Jung had placed, his theory of archetypes that was informed by actually the astrological archetypes, the 12 signs of the zodiac, but it was not something that he was willing to concede given the the environment of rationalism within which this was. But I mean, the similarities are a bit too much to ignore.
So what Jung did was, he on one hand he had the theory of archetypes, and later on he also dabbled into astrology. So we don't know if he had studied astrology before he came up with the idea of archetypes. It's quite possible. But what we definitely know is Jung had a lot of fascination with astrology, and when he developed this typology of personalities, he also used typology in therapy, and he also used astrology to combine that with typology. We'll come to typology probably next time, where he divides all people into 8 groups. And that is very near to what you are saying, that you can divide people into certain astrological types. You can also say that the symbols there of lion or of scorpion, they may tell us in some way a kind of criteria on which that group has been grouped. Now, what the difference is, when Jung makes the list of archetypes, he is not using the kind of typal symbols which we see in astrology. So what we can say is, did he read it before creating this concept? Quite possible. Did he use symbols from astrology in making a list of archetypes? No, he did not. Did he use astrology, complete astrology as a package in his theory later on? He did. In fact, even today, there are many people, many Jungians, who use astrology and typology both in their therapy work. Karuna, have I answered something?
Yes, this is thankful. This is helpful. Thank you.
Yes, Shalini.
Dr. Vaidya, I wanted basically some opinion on two questions. One was related to this distinction you made between Pralay and Mahapralay, where you said that in Mahapralay it seems like the basics um, of laws itself change, right? So I want to understand that, are we then situating archetypes to be I don't know how to explain it, but are we making it more expansive that these archetypes will defy logic and rules even when this pralay and mahapralay happen? Is that what we are referring to?
No, no.
Okay. So that's first question. The second thing was when you were talking about desire, that psychoanalysts usually will bring back everything to desire. Is it equivalent to then the life force or eros, which, let's say, according to the Jungian model, the eros is much broader. It's not in the way the Freudian framework defines it. It's much more expansive and includes the creativity instinct as well. So I'm just wanting your opinion on this distinction you made around desire. That is the Jungian framework more expansive? And is it not similar to eros and life force?
Not more expansive, but it is different in the sense that when we say that instead of desire, we will use archetypes as the unit of motivation, the fundamental unit of motivation, then what we are saying is, let us say, I want to live out my hero archetype. So when I want to live out my hero archetype, and let's say I am living out. So in elemental terms, what drives am I satisfying? So I am satisfying my drive for power. I am satisfying my drive for fame. I am satisfying perhaps my drive for money also. And maybe my drive for women or sexuality. Now, all these elemental desires, they go, and my altruistic drive also. So all these desires are packaged in one archetype called the hero archetype. So when I live out the hero archetype, in elemental terms, I am living out 5 to 7 different elemental desires. But Jung does not go analyzing desire in its elemental form. He likes to put archetype as the fundamental operational elemental where he will start his thinking about desire, because it does not go more elemental than that. In fact, it does not go even into the manufacturing process of the archetype. That when I say the hero archetype, then if I want to make the image of a hero, what elements do I need? For example, if I'm making bhaji pav, I need all the vegetables cut and all the masalas in place. Those are the constituents that go into it. Similarly, if I want to create a image of a hero, I want strength, I want courage, I want altruism, I want good looks, I want so many elementals to go into it to create that image. So that image is an aggregate thing. Now, how that aggregate archetype is formed using these elementals, Jung does not get into the manufacturing process of the archetype. So the desire is dealt with differently. Instead of dealing with it individually in an elemental one by one desire kind of way, what he does is he aggregates desire into a human role. And through those human roles, the desires are satisfied.
Can I, if you allow me, can I then stretch it a bit? It might sound very stupid, but
Go on.
Isn't it then, okay, let me see if I can frame it a little properly. Isn't it very much restricted to our Milky Way? Because the moment we say beyond space, time, dimension, we are going in the realm which I basically, I don't know how else to formulate my question except to say this archetype of the hero or the archetype of a trickster or any of these archetypes, would they be manifesting in any other galaxy or any other space?
We can look at this concept of archetype in 2 ways. One is in a operational clinical psychology realm, and second in the philosophical realm. Now, when we get into the philosophical realm, we start talking about archetypes very parallel to that of Platonic forms. And then we talk about something being beyond space and time, something which is beyond manifestation, but from which manifestation proceeds. So there is in essence world out there of which the world we see is a manifestation. But if we leave out that philosophical part and we come back to clinical psychology part, then we are looking at archetypes completely in the space-time realm like any other psychological variable. And 99% of the times, we will be looking at archetypes as any other clinical variable. We will not talk about going beyond space and time or archetype being a expression of unus mundus or something of that. This is for learning, but when it comes to clinical area, we will deal with archetypes as any other psychological variable.
Yeah, thank you. I think that helps. For me, probably the question was coming more from the philosophical realm, not clinical psychology application. I think I understood. I was not sure about the philosophical, but your comments help. Thank you.
So often this happens that people don't differentiate, and then we start getting confused. Okay, in therapy, how will we deal with these concepts of beyond space and time?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
So we keep the two discussions apart, the philosophical and the clinical psychology discussion. So whenever we see now, how do we say okay, what we see in the outside world or in our life as a constant? So the core is, what are the constants in our life? So the constants in our life are, we are all born, we will all be children, we will all grow up, we will get into teenage and separate from our parents, we will go out, work and earn for ourselves, we will have a family, we will get old and we will die. Now these are constants of human life. So in a way, this is a generic program of human life. And this program has been constant for millions of years. And whenever we see constants of this type, we ask the question that if this is a constant, there must be something in the mind to make this constant operate. How are these constants operating in terms of a process? So there must be some structural element inside of us which makes this process work over and over again. And there we look for archetypes. So we look for civilizational constants of two types. One, individual biological constants, like we all will be born children, we all will be children, and so on and so forth. These are biological, there is a biological program of life. And then there is a social program of life, that we will all go out and do some work. And what will be that work? Somebody will become a healer, somebody will become a magician, somebody will become a poet. And we see these jobs also are constants. It is not that the job of the doctor has emerged in last century. It was always there. It is not that the job of a magician has suddenly emerged. It was always there. So these are social constants of civilization. So just as there are biological constants, there are social constants. And therefore, we look for archetypes of all this type, that in the collective unconscious, there must be archetypes which reflect the biological program of life and archetypes which reflect the social scene that we see outside. So archetypes are motivational centers. How do they become motivational centers? Like chakras, they activate and deactivate. Meaning, right now, whatever I am speaking and the energy I am generating in myself to speak is generated because the teacher archetype is active in me. And the teacher archetype being active in me is satisfying some of my desires. One desire can be of individuation, that I find that this is something I should be doing, and it gives me satisfaction that I was born for this. And I am realizing my latent design when I am doing this. There can be a second motivation of earning money, that I feel my greed is satisfied or my need is satisfied, and therefore I am able to handle my anxiety of survival. It may be satisfying my desire for fame, that I may have a desire in my unconscious mind that you will all go out and say good things about me and I will achieve some fame. There might be an altruistic desire in me that you will all do good therapy after this. than you were doing before this. And some of you might become very good Jungians later on. So there is a bundle of desires that is being satisfied when my teacher archetype is activated. And that activation gives rise to this set of biochemical reactions which provides energy to me, what we call normally motivation. So to do this, I need motivation. From that motivation comes energy. And from that energy I use to think and speak. And all of this happens because the teacher archetype is strong in me. And that is one of the routes through which I have to do individuation. And similarly, in you, the student archetype at the moment is activated. And therefore, behavior, thoughts, feelings proper to the student are active at this moment inside of you. That you don't see me as just another man of 60 kg on two legs. You see me as a teacher, which means all the associations related to the teacher are projected onto me right now. So there is an archetypal projection of the teacher onto me from you, and from me onto you of a student. So what I would say is, let us say I start talking first as a teacher, and then you start developing projection of a teacher over me. Then I will use the statement which is number 8 here, constellation and evocation. That I start behaving like a teacher in front of you. So my teacher archetype is active and it starts constellating you. It starts moving around you. And the teacher archetype constellation around you evokes in you the student archetype. So there are phenomena of constellation and evocation. Any question on this? It's very important. How do archetypes activate? Yes, please. Ha, Karuna.
So there has to be a kind of shared vocabulary for one archetype to be activated. I mean, then it has to be projected. This kind of symbiotic relationship, so to speak, has to happen to be able to converse in that.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So just as in Freudian scheme, transference begets counter-transference. Similar to that, constellation begets evocation.
Okay, thank you.
That
also projective identification, right?
Yes, projective identification also will get into evocation.
Okay.
But Jung never used the word projective identification so much. So what the concept is right, that the projective identification also is another form of intrapsychic constellation. That you are not behaviorally precipitating the activation, you are projecting into the person and getting the activation. So if we use projective identification, then we'll have to divide the word constellation into two: external constellation and internal constellation. I mean, that is coining new words. They are not Jungian words, but they are necessary. Just bear with me. It's so new that it takes time to be familiar with it. It's completely different from all that we have studied till now. So they are motivational centers. How are they motivational centers? Because age appropriate, there is activation and deactivation of archetypes to help the person realize the program of life. Meaning, when I was 5 years of age or 2 years of age, the child archetype in me was strongly activated. And that kept trying to activate the parental archetype in my parents. Because unless that is activated, they will not take care of me. And that activation is partly natural and partly by constellation. Then, when I become 13 or 14, the child archetype gets deactivated slowly and the prince archetype gets activated. And this activation and deactivation is done by the self. The self is the coordinator at the center, which activates and deactivates archetypes based upon the program of life. That what stage of life are you? When you become 65, 70, the hero archetype naturally will get deactivated, and the old wise man archetype will naturally get activated. So one activation and deactivation of archetypes happens by self in accordance with the program of life. But there is also the environment which will activate or deactivate certain archetypes. So experience of life also is another activation deactivation force. Now philosophically, Immanuel Kant, Plato, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, they all believe in some sort of design in nature. And they are all with Jung on design of nature, though they are not into psychology. Jung brings in here the idea of the seed and the tree. That the blueprint of a human life is already contained in his collective unconscious, in his self. And what happens in life is realization of that design. So there is a unique design for each person, which is unique in one way, but not unique in the way that it is completely different from everybody else. Like we have, all of us have fingerprints, but different fingerprints. Similarly, we all will undergo a activation of hunter archetype when we go for jobs, but each of us will take up a different job. So the life story of an individual, the blueprint of it is already there in the self and the archetypes. Now one can raise a question. The society that we see around us, is that also in our genes? Is it that the outside is not incidental? It is planned by nature in some way, and historical ages also have some pattern to them. Many people believe that history is not incidental. There is a design behind history. And if there is, then we are looking at a larger pattern, an archetypal pattern in history, which may not be the same archetypal pattern as in human beings, but the two will be connected. Now, what happens if we get lost in the outside world and we don't listen to our archetypes inside or our self inside? We feel alienated. We don't feel anchored. We don't feel our feet are touching the ground. We feel we are doing something very plastic, very token. We don't really feel anchored anywhere. And if we believe in history being led by design, then this whole history of savage stage, tribal stage, and so on. Because Sri Aurobindo and Hegel both have given this evolution of history kind of idea. That from savage state will go to tribal, tribal to village, village to individualistic modern stage, which is what we are in at present. And that will be followed by mystical stage and spiritual stage. So Sri Aurobindo gives this kind of model. Hegel gives somewhat different model, but he also has a model for historical evolution driven by design. What we get here is that in the life of the individual and history of humanity, both of them, the concept of seed and the tree can exist. That all events, whether individual or historical, are not incidental, but they are manifestations of something latent already planned, which means human free will is limited in its capability. That we can accelerate or deaccelerate larger global events, but we can't cause or stop them totally. So there is place for free will, but a limited place for free will within a larger design that cannot be altered. Any questions? Okay, now let us look at how we look at archetype as a potential and archetype specified. Like we said, we have a predisposition, we don't have a fully constructed specific entity. So let us look at the archetype of the mother. All human beings will have the archetype of the mother, but some will realize that archetype in the form of Mother Mary. Some will look at it in terms of Goddess Durga. Some will look at it in terms of Gaia. Gaia means the world goddess who is conscious, Mother Earth who is conscious. That often shamans use the word Gaia. You can look at your own mother as manifestation in specifics of the mother archetype. One can look at Mother Earth. One can look at Bharat Mata, motherland. Some countries have the concept of fatherland. Or one can look at Kali. These are all different ways of specifying the mother archetype. So there is an in potential archetype, and how you specify it in reality, that in between is your individuality and your culture. So we don't have inside our mind Mother Durga or Mother Earth. We have the maternal archetype. Now, whether that maternal archetype is worshipped as Bharat Mata or as Mother Earth or as Mother Mary depends on many things. But the common thing will be whether you are worshipping Mother Mary or Bharat Mata or Kali, all of this will have mother archetype inside the mind. The specification will be different. Like for example, we always talk of object, we talk of desire and object of desire. Like, let me give an example. 500 years back, if somebody had a chariot, the family will sit on the chariot and go across the city to show everyone that we have a chariot which few people have. And they would feel very proud that we are successful, rich people who have a chariot in the family and others don't have. Now today, the chariot is substituted by Mercedes. That we will go with our family in Mercedes and we will show off and feel good about it. We will feel proud that we are successful and rich and others are not. So what has happened? The desire is still the same, but the object of desire has changed. From the chariot, we have come to the Mercedes. So the object of desire keeps changing in the outer world, but in the inner world, the desire remains the same across generations. The inner world dynamic is the same. I have and you don't have. I know and you don't know. This race cannot stop. And this race keeps individuals and societies going. Now, what are the phenomena that archetypes undergo? Archetypes undergo phenomena like evocation. You have to activate an archetype. Constellation. At times, some archetype constellates us and it evokes something in us. Activation of archetype, deactivation. We have talked about. Submergence and emergence. Now, what is that? Anyone? Yeah, but before that, do you understand evocation and constellation?
Not really. Could you please clarify?
Okay. So we said that all feelings, thoughts, behaviors in human mind are governed either from the environment or from inside. And when they are governed from inside, it is by activation and deactivation of archetypes. Now, how are archetypes activated or deactivated? One we said was the self can activate or deactivate based upon the program of life. That when you become a teenager, the prince archetype will be activated, child archetype will be deactivated. Otherwise, you will keep displaying the behavior of a child. Similarly, when you become old, the old wise man archetype will be activated and the hero archetype will be deactivated. Otherwise, you will start, even in the old age, start dressing up like a college student. And that will create a very difficult situation. It will awkward situation. Because age-appropriate deactivation of the hero archetype has not taken place. And let us say somebody in the college starts speaking like a 75-year-old person. So what has happened is, instead of the hero archetype, which is age-appropriate, the old wise man archetype is activated in him, and that has activated thoughts, feelings, behavior appropriate to the old wise man. So he is like a old wise man sitting in a college canteen. So age appropriate, our thoughts, feelings, behavior have to be. And how will they be age appropriate? By appropriate activation and deactivation of archetypes. So normally we say that our thoughts, feelings, and behavior should be age appropriate. Now all of that agreed. Now Jung says this can happen only if this happens. The archetypal activation and deactivation is built behind it. That is how Jung says it. We don't have to see it that way, but since we are learning Jung sees it that way. Now, the second activation and so one self can activate and deactivate archetypes from inside age appropriate. One. Second, archetype can be activated because of environmental situation. Let us say a Nobel Prize winner comes and stands in front of me. Now I have no choice but to activate my student archetype. So second can be a person who is aged 75 or who is of my father's age. He starts talking to me like that. There is no way but to activate a certain archetype. So environmental conditions also will, in simple words, environment will cause thoughts, feelings, and behavior. In Jungian terms, we will say environment will cause activation and deactivation of archetypes. Because Jung will say that these thoughts, feelings, and behavior are not just there. They are there because archetypal activation, deactivation is happening. And the third will be somebody behaves with me in a particular way, and that over a period of time makes me behave in a particular way. That let us say a patient comes to you and he starts looking at you as your father or mother, as his father or mother. And after some time, right, we will say counter-transference happens. And you start looking at that person as a son or a daughter. So what has happened? His child archetype has been constellating around you. And after some time, it has evoked the parent archetype. So the third process will be constellation and evocation. That if some archetype constellates you, it solicits from you appropriate behavior, which is evocation in you of a corresponding archetype. Corresponding meaning relevant archetype.
That helps. So does that mean with evocation and constellation, the archetype, it happens relationally?
Yes.
Is that component important to differentiate it from activation and deactivation?
Yeah, that is true. It's a relational.
Okay, thank you.
Now we talk of submergence and emergence. When there are two parts. One, archetype have to be activated appropriately, appropriate to age, appropriate to situation. The second element about archetype, which is it should also be evoked in appropriate intensity. So intensity is second part of archetype. If something goes out of optimum range, then that intensity can also create a problem. Let us say we talk of hero archetype and the person just goes out of control. What we are looking at then is narcissistic personality disorder or psychosis or antisocial disorder. Because the hero archetype has gone completely out of control in intensity. So it may have been evoked age appropriate, but the intensity was not appropriate. So it has to be age appropriate and intensity appropriate. Yes, Shalini.
Dr. Vaidya, here do you feel then culture has such an important role to play? Because what gets constituted as appropriate, inappropriate, more, less, these are all qualifiers, no?
Yes, true.
Because maybe something that gets viewed as inhibition in one culture might actually be called pathological in another. And so it's so subjective in one way. So archetypes, aren't they supposed to be beyond culture as a qualifier?
No, because वहाँ पे क्या होगा कि what you are saying, the first part is completely correct. There is a cultural subjectivity to what is optimum and what is not. So, now, what happens is कि when we define a DSM disorder, usually we are in such extreme levels of dysfunction that by and large most cultures will agree to it. So if, for example, the hero archetype is so overactivated that the person goes psychotic or the person goes antisocial, you will not have much of subjective cultural difficulties there. Where you will have subjective difficulties will be when he has narcissistic personality disorder. Because what is narcissism in one culture may not be actually narcissism in another culture. In many patriarchal cultures, they may take it to be a very normal thing for a man to do.
Yeah.
So in certain parts of DSM, we will not have any difficulty, but in certain parts, we will have a subjective cultural element to it. And that's one of the difficulties of DSM, that it is not purely a scientific document. It is a part cultural document, part scientific.
Yeah, I think from the clinical point of view, maybe because of just how the nomenclature is worded, I can see your point that maybe will be more clear. I was actually looking at this slide of mother archetype, and it's so interesting because I was thinking the embodiment of Durga energy or the Durga archetype is going to be actually revered in Eastern cultures. But if you look at the personification that we see in the representation of Virginal Mary, I'm suspecting that maybe is it possible that in cultures also there can be splitting, or in cultures also there can be incomplete manifestation? Or should we consider that the expression of Mary as a mother archetype is as complete as the expression of Durga as a mother archetype, that they are whole in themselves?
I have my own strong opinions, but I don't even have to evoke them. I can just repeat what Jung has said on this.
Okay.
Jung is very clear, and he writes upon this, that he, to use his own words, I don't remember the exact words, but the effect is this. What he says is that the Western culture will always be neurotic, will not have place for the devil. What he means to say is that it is a split culture.
Yeah.
And this brings us to a larger discussion on singularism and pluralism. That when one way of thinking is that there is one truth, I know that truth, or somebody knows that truth, he has put it down in this book, and it is now my duty to make sure everyone follows it. That is singularism, and that is the base of all the Semitic religions.
Yeah.
Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. That there is one truth, it has been known by person X, he has said something that has been put down in book Y, and now it is my duty to take it to all corners of the world. So that is what Jung says is kind of digital thinking or a split thinking. Whereas in the Eastern cultures, we had far more of integration, where we can have Kali as the mother goddess with severed heads and dripping of blood. And all the tantric goddesses, especially the Aghor goddesses or the 10 Mahavidya goddesses, they are all terrible in their forms. And we are asked to worship them, and that closes the split between the all beautiful, all good, and the horrible and all evil. We start finding the good and the benevolent in the horrible. And that is like a classical split closing exercise. So cultures are split. Cultures can get into digital thinking, and cultures can follow singularism or pluralism. One of the difficulties with Western thought has always been singularism. That whatever ideologies come from there, whether it is Christianity or the opposite of it, communism, both are equally singular in their approach.
Got it. Yeah.
Like communism is as staunch in their belief that there is no God as Christianity is strong in belief that there is a God. And contrary to that is the Eastern approach, which says that reality is too complex. It is very difficult to say anything final about it. So we can have only competing schools of thought, which we call darshan. And those darshans also get into a kind of synthetic integrated thinking and not singularism. So the singularism base of the Western thought and the pluralism base of the Eastern thought are different. And Jung was very clear, he has written extensively about it, of how the Western mind is fundamentally a split mind. It is yet to get into that synthesis. So we now come to the concepts of submergence and emergence. We talked about intensity, and let us say the self becomes too active and throws the ego off its seat of power. The self has become inflated. It has become too powerful and it hijacks. Or the poet archetype has become too powerful and the person is living completely in imagination. Then how will he take care of himself and his family? So if the intensity of archetype is very high, it becomes a problem. Let us say we talk of the predator archetype. That predator meaning somebody out there who is trying to kill me and eat me. If I call that predator to me, I am food for him. And the predator archetype is overactive. If it is overactive, what happens? I have paranoia that somebody will attack me because the predator archetype is overactive. So Jung's explanation for delusion of persecution will be overactivation of the predator archetype. Let us say it is underactive. Then what happens? It is like an autistic child not fearing what he should be fearing. Certain autistic children have this characteristic. They don't feel fear where they should be feeling fear. And that is dangerous for survival. So underactivation of the predator archetype will lead to those kind of autistic symptoms, and overactivation will lead to paranoia. Somewhere in between is the healthy zone where the intensity has to stabilize. So apart from activation and deactivation, intensity is important. Now let us say something becomes very intense like the self and it submerges the ego. So if the ego is submerged in the self because of the inflation of the self, one gets into psychosis or narcissistic personality disorder, essentially some form of grandiosity. We are talking about the same disorders, just the explanation is different. And so this is submergence, that one archetype can get very active, expand itself, inflate itself, and submerge the balancing archetype. Because many archetypes are in pairs, they balance each other. The child and the parent the anima and the animus, right? The sage and the hunter. These are like balancing pair of archetypes. They balance each other. The hunter and the poet, they balance each other. So submergence happens when one becomes very active, inflates and submerges the other. Emergence happens when somebody has been submerged and he comes out of it. Like in the age group of 13 to 15, just when the puberty sets in, we have dreams of the child as a hero cutting off the legs of the octopus and freeing himself. Or he is fighting inside the ocean and he is swallowed by a shark and he cuts it open and it emerges out of the water. These are all emergence dreams, and they are representing the emergence phenomena where an archetype which was submerged in something else is now emerging. Age appropriate. Jung says what is completely repressed and not lived out becomes a source of projection. So what is least lived out, least accepted becomes a source of projection. And all the archetypes, they create a surreal world of, they are there in the surreal, they don't create, but they are present in the surreal world of mythology. We now come to the next question. How many archetypes are there in the collective unconscious? And different people have given different counts, and it keeps increasing over time. More and more people say this is also an archetype, this is also an archetype. And the criteria is it a civilizational constant? And is it there by birth and not acquired by cultural diffusion? Okay. So be that as it may, some people say now you can order archetypes from Amazon.com. It has become an industry so much of itself. So let the number be whatever it is. But let us look at the archetypes, different types of archetypes. So we can have biological archetypes, which are biologically based, like the archetype of birth, child, mother, father, prince, hunter, old wise man, and death. This is like our biological journey. And for every stage of our life, there is an archetype inside which activates, deactivates age appropriate. So there is a series of biological archetypes, a collection of biological archetypes in the collective unconscious. Then there are psychological archetypes like persona, shadow, anima, animus, and self. So let us discuss this. What is persona? Persona, Jung says, is what we put up before the world. So every man has two parts of the personality. One that he displays before the world, and second, what he is inside. So persona is that part of our personality that we put before the world. It is our showroom. And opposite to our showroom is our godown, which is the shadow. All the parts of ourself which we don't want to accept, which we don't want to show to the world. That is our shadow. And there is no man free from the persona and the shadow. It takes years of work before the two can be integrated. It's not a natural default condition. The default condition is disassociation. That the persona will be disassociated from the shadow is a natural condition. The two are integrated will happen after years of self-work. So persona is the best part of us that we show to the world. It's our advertisement. And shadow is what we don't want to show. At times we want to hide it even from ourselves. So you can divide the shadow into a gray shadow and a black shadow. Gray shadow is what we know but we hide, and black shadow is even we don't want to know. It's completely unconscious. Anima is the feminine part of us, and animus is the masculine part of us. And Jung says both of them are present in everyone. The proportion is different. In men, the animus will be more, and in women, anima will be. And then the self that we have seen, which regulates the whole thing. And self desires completeness, wholeness. So what is important is integration between these opposites. They are not opposites, in a way they are complementary, but integration between persona and the shadow. That is a very important part of Jungian therapy. Integration between anima and the animus. Well, we will call Shiv Shakti or Narayan. The integration of yin and yang, anima and animus. Now, what will happen if there is too much of either? Too much of persona. What will it lead to in DSM?
Narcissistic?
Histrionicity.
Insightless, totally.
Okay.
Yes.
No insight.
Correct. So Shalini said narcissism, that is true partly. The best will be histrionicity. No depth, no anchoring, no roots. Completely playing to the gallery all the time. Very plastic and synthetic existence. So you will find narcissism, histrionicity, and antisocial personality. Very high shadow. What will it lead to? One, signal anxiety. So all the symptoms of different symptoms of anxiety, because there's too much repressed trying to come up. Second is depression. Energy will be consumed in that repression. Too strong a shadow can lead easily to antisocial personality disorder. It can easily lead to impulse control problems. Anima and animus. Too high an anima will lead to lack of empathy, will lead to lack of creativity, because empathy, creativity are animus, other way around. Anima, too high an anima will lead to lack of stability and power. Too high of an animus will lead to lack of creativity and empathy, because creativity and empathy and flow are anima functions. Power, stability are animus functions. This is true at the cultural level also. When any culture becomes too anima oriented, too soft, too empathic, barbaric cultures attack and take over. We have seen that multiple times. You have seen that in Troy. We have seen that in fall of Baghdad. We have seen that in fall of India. Extremely advanced cultures taken over by barbarians. Because when you don't give adequate importance to animus, then historically this happens. So history teaches us the violence and brutality also are a part of life, as much as sensitivity and empathy is. So Jung always talks of balance. Never to go too much of on one side. So integration of anima and animus is also very important. Similarly, integration of self, not integration, but optimization of interaction between self and the ego is also very important. So these you can call as psychological archetypes. Persona, shadow, anima, animus, and self. Yes, please.
Sir, I did not follow how birth and death to be visualized as archetypes, because child, mother, father, all everybody. But how do we visualize birth and death as Archetypes that I did not follow.
There are two ways out of it. One is you can remove them because
Sorry?
one is you can remove that from the list.
Uh-huh.
Actually does not create any big problem because many people don't include it.
Uh-huh.
They include only child, mother, father. What you said, they appear very logical. So that is one way out of it. The second way is this archetype of birth and death, they repeat in the developmental process. Like whenever you are growing in therapy, often during therapy you will have dreams about birth and death.
Rebirth kind of
Correct.
experience.
Psychological rebirth and psychological death. But if you put it as a biological thing, my personal feeling is that there would be archetypes of birth and death, even biological, not only related to psychological growth, because all the important events in life are somehow programmed in the archetypal program, archetypal collection. And it is therefore incomplete if these two important events are not there. So, birth, the moment the birth happens, the first gasp of the child, or the moment the death happens, certain physiological, psychological changes which are released may be because of the birth and the death archetype. That they are not essentially human roles like that of a child, mother or father, but they are important events biologically speaking. That is why I have put there. Okay,
Processes rather than products.
yes. So something is activating processes in the child the moment he comes out of the womb. And that, psychologically speaking, will have to be the biological, the archetype of birth, which releases the thoughts and feelings and actions psychologically. Autonomous nervous system will do its own job. That's a different thing. But the other part of the what we call the psyche, the conscious part of it, or at least the not conscious, but what we call the psyche, let us say, that appropriate thoughts, feelings, and actions will be generated by activation of the activation of the birth archetype.
Yes.
And similarly, in a near-death situation, the death archetype will activate, and person will have thoughts, feelings, and actions appropriate to that stage. And many times it activates some months before the actual death. And I have seen people who told their family members, "Okay, now take me back to my village. I want to die where I was a child." And the man was taken to the village. He had a closure of his childhood memories for about a month or two, and then he passed away peacefully. It's very common to go back to your place of childhood to die. It's a very good way to die.
Yes.
So Jung
Thank
writes elaborately about old age, and he sees old age as very productive. He does not see that as helpless waiting for death. He sees old age as very, very productive, and he writes extensively about it. And like Heidegger, he does lot of cogitation on death. Like Heidegger goes on and on theorizing about death. So Jung does not go to that extent, but he writes a great deal. Yes, please.
Rather unrelated maybe, but Cathcart and Klein in their book on Heidegger and Hippo through those pearly gates. They finished the book by saying that the hippo was admitted inside the heaven and Heidegger was sent back. He was refused. They write philosophy in humor, in a joking fashion.
Heidegger writes very well. He says, "Death is my own most."
My own?
My own most.
Most.
Most. He puts two words together, own and most. Own most.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, It will be an experience I will not live to experience. Like, I will not read my obituary. Many people say, I wish I could and set right everyone who has written it. So, psychological archetypes, you can have either this classification I have done, nobody, I mean, it's not Jungian, it's my doing.
Okay.
It's my mischief.
Nice.
But Jung puts it all together. Jungians also put it all together, but I find it confusing, so I have classified. So biological archetypes, psychological archetypes, natural world archetypes, like predator, protector, and prey. This is our evolutionary experience, constants of evolution. And no doubt something would be there inside, which is a corresponding constant to this. Social archetypes, what we find in society. The magician, the poet, the king, the queen, the teacher, the healer. They are not incidental. They are there because inside of us, all the archetypes are there. And the design of society is such that in some people, one of these archetypes will be very powerful and they will adopt this as a profession. Of course, king and queen is different, but rest of them. That left to one's choice, one will choose a profession corresponding to the strongest archetype. And many people choose professions which are contrary to this, and therefore they suffer. Because the archetype inside of them wants them to be X and they have become Y because of the pressure of finance or lack of options. So in the therapy, it's very important to find what is your blueprint, what you are supposed to be, and then walk towards that. Should we break for a cup of tea and come back in 10 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So we were into types of archetypes. So let us come to the cultural archetypes. The cultural archetypes, I have listed some of them. Some of them are global, some of them are specific to a culture. Like the trickster archetype. In Hindi, they call it Chaliya. So that you find in most cultures, in stories, in literature. And often you find nicknames for this trickster in languages. Who always does something naughty, something sly, something which is soft cunning. Then you have the myth of Icarus. So it's a Greek myth where somebody was given wings of wax to fly and asked not to go towards the sun. But the person went towards the sun, the wings melted and he fell down. And the myth of Icarus is taken as the myth which represents the bipolar disorder. That you go up high in mania and then you come crashing down. Till your wings are intact, till you have the energy for mania, you go up and then you come crashing down. We had the myth, in India we have the myth of Bhole Shankar, the innocent man. Harishchandra, the truthful man. Shravan Kumar, the one who looks after his parents all his life. So these are the myths which are cultural. You will find a generic version of it everywhere. But the specific version is culture. Then your spiritual archetypes. Like in India, we have Dasha Avatar, the Samudra Manthan, the myth of Kali, Dash Mahavidyas, Bhairav, Ganesha, Krishna, Parshuram, Rama, every. So you can have a psychoanalytic story of each of them. I have some videos on my channel where I have discussed these myths. So I have done that in two ways. One is discussion of individual Hindu myths, and one is a comparative between Hindu myths and the Greek myths. Then you can have historical archetypes related to some cataclysmic event like deluge, like we have had in our history of humanity, deluge, apocalypse, black death of smallpox or some virus, Dasha Avatar or Avalokiteshvara. Like in Tibet, there is a myth that unidentified flying objects or extraterrestrials, they came from outside and landed here, and they taught us everything. So they believe Lord Shiva was the Avalokiteshvara who descended from some other planet and taught us the foundations of entire human culture and spirituality. So they call it Avalokiteshvara. Avalok means some other world, Avalok. So Ishvara of some other world had descended down in some sort of a unidentified flying object. And that myth has been there for centuries. It's still there. So these are historical myths, and they often come up in language, in mythology, in literature, and those who know it often in their dreams. And in some cases, they come up even in dreams of those who don't know it. And yet there is a secret memory. Now one can do a comparative between Western and Hindu archetypes. So in the Western world, we have archetypes of Narcissus, Oedipus, Sisyphus, Icarus, God and the devil. On the Hindu side, we have Ganesha, Mahavidyas, Amrut Manthan, Dashavatar, and that of Prahlada. You can have a psychoanalytic story of each of these myths. So there will be a mythological story, and behind the mythological story, you can read the psychoanalytic story. And this you can do to the entire mythology. That behind every mythological story, you can see a psychoanalytic story. And that psychoanalytic story is the reason why the myth survives. Because in the world of myth also, there is survival of the fittest. Every myth that you know, you're not going to pass to the next generation. Only myths which are relevant to you, interesting to you, you will pass to the next generation. So when you look at intergenerational transmission of myth, there is a survival process, struggle for survival built in there. And very few myths endure centuries. And those that do are very archetypal in their nature because they are representing something constant in human nature. That is why they are appealing to you and me after thousands of years, because some of our concerns at their roots are the same as concerns of somebody hundreds of years earlier. Like anxiety of moving from childhood to teenage, anxiety of going to work, anxiety of getting married, anxiety of childbirth, anxiety of parents' death, anxiety of our own death. These are common anxieties to all human beings across generations. So when you have myths which address these anxieties, they will get passed generation after generation because they are always relevant. So one can do a comparative. We will not go into it, but the myth of Ganesha, Mahavidya, you will know. Narcissus, you know myth. Oedipus, you know. Sisyphus, do you know the myth of Sisyphus? It's a very famous story, the myth of Sisyphus.
You cannot actually put the rock on the top of the hill. It keeps on coming down and you keep on taking the effort. That was the curse.
Correct.
But there is a positive side to it, that you always are haunted by a positive motive. So no matter how close to defeat you come, you don't stop. You keep on taking effort. So perseverance and resilience.
Correct. And towards the end of the story is a
Mhm.
revolutionary call to
Sorry?
towards the end of the story is a revolutionary call
Uh-huh.
not to abide by the gods.
Oh. Uh-huh.
What will happen if the Sisyphus refuses to do as he's asked to do?
Hmm.
What more curse can they give?
Hmm.
So then, one end of the story also is related to revolt and the quest for freedom. Many people who are into political ideology, they take it into communism. That the capitalist order makes human beings as Sisyphus. You go to a factory, work there for 12 hours, come back, go to sleep, again go to the factory. Life is like the myth of Sisyphus. That it is too hard just to earn the luxury of being alive. So,
God stabbed me in the back. That is the story in Jait Re Jait, a Marathi film by Mohan Agashe, Smita Patil, and
good. Now we'll look at another aspect of archetypes, where, as we said, the archetypes are like aggregation of many desires. And they are also, it's like aggregation of desires, and on top of it, you put a biological stage or a social role. Either biological stage or social role or both, and an aggregation of desire. The three come together to create the operational core of an archetype. Now, one of the important elements is that the archetypes are not something very factual. They are something like entities of desire. They are surreal entities. And there's a lot of imagination and omnipotence, idealism built into the archetypes. So, some of the archetypes that we have inside of us, which we are in search of, is what I call the eternus desirous list of archetypes. Like eternus feminis, the perfect woman that every man is in search for. Eternus masculinus, the perfect man that the woman is in search for. Eternus maternus, the perfect mother that every child is in search for. Eternal paternus, the perfect father. And a perfect life upon earth, eternus heavenus. We should have a perfect life upon earth. Like the search for heaven on earth. And these are all built in. Even though we know how far we are from all of this, despite that, the desire does not go. Reality does not erase desire. No matter how distant or opposite the reality is to desire. These are such desires that they seem to be archetypal desires built into us, no matter what the reality outside is. No matter how many women we know or how many men we know, and we also know how far they are from perfection, and yet the desire does not go. So these are like inbuilt desires. And the eternus omnipotence, we all have a desire for omnipotence, which is expressed in 100 different ways. The search for omnipotence is always on, and we see that in a dysfunctional way in psychosis and personality disorders. The search for omnipotence gone dysfunctional. And in a way, we are all searching for some sort of an absolute. So these are all archetypal desires. Now, if
so
we Yeah, please.
Femi fatality or infant, terrible infant, there also can be said to be archetypes or stereotypes.
Yeah, yeah. Stereotypes, definitely they are,
Mhm.
but you will always find a corresponding archetype to that in some cultural form. That some cultures definitely will have uh, femme fatale as archetype in their culture. The seductive woman who lays astray an otherwise pious man.
Otherwise,
Otherwise pious man.
that is good.
So the Indian myth is of Menka,
Yeah.
who seduces Vishwamitra. That otherwise pious man. This is now less in Indian culture. It used to be very strong at one point. The pious man and the seducing woman. I still remember there was an old song. One of the lines there was, हाँ, उस नारी का दास न बन, राह चलत को जो राह चलत को राह बुलाए. उस नारी का दास न बन तू, जो राह चलत को राह बुलाए. Meaning the otherwise pious man and the seducing woman. So I think a lot of cultures will have that femme fatale. Temper tantrums also. So Jung does not go into the manufacturing process of the archetypes. But since we said they are aggregative entities, one can look at their constitution. And we see in every archetype, there is a cognitive content, an affective content, and a value content. So this is somehow, we don't know how, but the mind collects these constituents and puts them in the form of an archetype. Now, does it happen immediately after birth? Does it happen in the womb before birth? Do archetypes get created after some time? We don't have any idea about it, but generally we believe they are inborn. That's what we believe. But even if they are inborn, there would be a manufacturing process. Jung does not go into that kind of manufacturing process. Like, if you look at the warrior archetype, and if you compare it with the chakra system, the warrior archetype is a lot of aggression and desire for fame and victory and domination. So if you look in terms of desires, it is aggression, sadism, domination, fame, maybe riches and women also. And if you go into chakras, then the root chakra, the Manipur chakra, and the sexual chakra, all of them are satisfied by exercise of the hero archetype.
Exercise on the
Of the hero archetype. Because 4-5 desires are satisfied when you successfully leave it out. And if you classify those desires in terms of chakras, they will fall in 3-4 different chakras. So maybe one manufacturing process conceptualization can be ki the desire, as it is allocated to the chakras, one way of satisfying the desire is to aggregate those desires into a layer of archetypes, which means desire is being satisfied partly through archetypes and partly directly. That will be the chakra archetype combination kind of model of the world. The archetypes are surreal. They are not really scientific, empirical, or factual in the, I should not say scientific or empirical, but they are not in content factual, but they are surreal. They have a lot of imagination, lot of desires built into themselves.
they're not material.
No, yeah, they are not material, and they are not something concerned with facts. They are something concerned with desires, and the desires involving a lot of fantasy.
But they are based on history, human evolution, and so
Right?
they cannot be called unscientific, I suppose.
Yes.
memes are taking birth from these social histories, no? Like genes, there are memes, no?
You are right. This needs to be reworded.
Uh-huh.
I should say they are not constituted by facts. It's a wrong use of words.
No, or not even an individual factual. They are generally, there is some common abstract story that could be, that comes out, that script that comes out of each
Correct.
archetype.
Correct. I'll reword this.
Sure.
The point is that they are not concerned with something which is strictly empirically factual, but they are concerned with something which is desire oriented and certain. And no doubt they are evolutionary entities and they have survived the selection of evolution. There's no doubt about it. And in that sense, evolutionary speaking, they are very scientific, extremely scientific from evolutionary point of view. So, one, Jung does not go into the epistemological manufacturing process of archetypes, nor which structures of the mind are participating in that process. So the structural process also is not there. So we don't know whether it's completely genetic. Is it partly genetic and then activated? Is it experience creation? So in my model of the mind, I have tried to take some discussion into this. Now, can we have something biological leading to something cultural? Take, for example, Freud talks about constituent instincts. I forget the name. Anyway, Freud talks about, let me just use the word constituent instincts for a matter for the moment, like exhibitionism, voyeurism, sadism, masochism. And they are constitutional. Now, something constitutional like that, say for example, voyeurism. Voyeurism is constitutional. And what it led to Vatsayana was peeping Tom. He would look into windows of others' rooms and note down what he saw. So the biological voyeurism led to the cultural archetype of the peeping Tom. Similarly, we have the myth of Rishi Shunak, who wanted to know what is going on in minds of everybody. So he did tapasya and he got the boon, but then he was agitated all the time. He could not be in peace because he kept knowing what is going on in the minds of everybody. So he went back to the God and said, "You take back the boon." And God said, "I can't do it. Now you live with it." And it was so agonizing that he went to some rishi and he said, "You take the name of Lord Hanuman and then this will go." So he did that. That is the myth of Rishi Shunak, that his voyeurism was different. It was not sexually oriented, it was psychologically oriented. He wanted to know the minds of others. And that gave to another kind of the archetype of the psychic. Similarly, in Indian mythology, the constituent instinct of sadism gives rise to the myth of Angulimal, who cuts fingers of the victims and keeps with himself. Similarly, we can have envy, rage of betrayal, Oedipal anger, all in Kans, who not only kills his sister's children, but he kills them in a particularly cruel way. He would throw them onto the walls, small babies, and crack open their heads. And that rage is not just self-defense. It's a very pathological rage. So we have the myth of Kans, where the pathological rage of envy, betrayal, Oedipus, all of that comes together. So We'll complete this in 5 more minutes and stop for the. Just give me 10 more minutes.
Yes.
So how do we link all these archetypes to DSM disorders? So too much or too little of anything can create a disorder, or inappropriate activation or deactivation can create a disorder. So there are two criteria: age appropriate inactive. Age. You have to activate and deactivate age appropriate. So one is that criteria, and second is in terms of intensity, you have to be in the healthy range. If either of these principles are violated, it results in a dysfunctional situation, some of which we will call a disorder. So self, if it inflates too much or deflates too much, it leads to narcissistic personality disorder, depersonalization, derealization, psychosis, or major depression. Shadow, it can lead to paranoid personality disorder, too much of it, intermittent explosive disorder, antisocial personality disorder, too much of persona, histrionic personality disorder, multiple identity, loneliness. We have not till called loneliness a personality disorder, but very soon we'll be calling it that. Maybe DSM-6 will have loneliness PD.
They will have a molecule before the category.
Correct.
Cannabinoid or phencyclidine or angel dust or something like that.
Correct. The brand name of that medicine will be company.
Company.
It gives you company.
Oh, I see. I see.
It's a good brand name for that medicine. Too much or too little of anima, meaning the feminine part of us. Too much of anima, dependent personality traits, social anxiety, avoidant personality disorder. Too much of masculinity, obsessive compulsive disorders, paranoid personality disorders, when the rage is projected out. The great mother, dependent personality, narcissistic personality. The terrible mother, borderline personality, attachment issues, psychosis. All the persecutory anxieties of the terrible mother. Attack will come. Hero archetype, narcissism, manic features, psychosis. Wise old man, narcissism, psychosis, mania. Child, dependent personality, separation anxiety, addiction. Trickster, antisocial personality, impulse control, conduct. Orphan, dependent personality, persistent depression, panic, anxiety, mania. Ruler or the king, OCD, OCPD, narcissism, separation, psychosis. Lover, narcissism, dependent, borderline, bipolar. Caregiver, this one. Dependent, narcissism, manic, rebel, oppositional defiance, antisocial spectrum. Magician, psychosis, schizotypal personality, NPD, narcissistic personality. Innocent, dependent, histrionic, or cognitive thought disorder. So this is how inappropriate activation or deactivation, or too much of intensity or too less an intensity of archetypes is linked to DSM disorders. Obviously, it's not a one-to-one. We are looking at a multifactorial situation. So what we see here is associations. So in Jungian therapy, we will say that this person has narcissism because the hero archetype is overactive or too intense. This person has dependent personality because the orphan archetype is too strong. This person is antisocial because the trickster archetype is too strong and the sage archetype is too weak. Because The trickster is opposite to sage. So this is a complementing pair of archetypes. They balance each other out. So this is also one important phenomena, the balancing of archetypes. That many archetypes exist in pairs which balance each other, like the trickster and the sage, the child and the parent, the hunter and the healer. The poet and the shopkeeper. They are like opposite balancing things. So one can look at this in three ways. When the intensity becomes too high or too less, it may be because the archetype itself is having intensity problems, or maybe because the complementing archetype is not doing its function. So in therapy, we will talk in this language, that when we say the person has narcissistic personality disorder, obviously we mean that the grandiosity is out of control. But instead of saying that the person is compensating inferiority with grandiosity, we will say here the hero archetype is overactive or too intense. And this has to be brought into healthy position. You're saying something.
I can't think of it right now. What occurred to me some time ago was conceptual diagnosis appear better than the DSM categories. They are required for epidemiological purposes and public health planning and all that. But for understanding a patient, conceptual diagnosis looks much more holistic.
Correct.
And have management implications.
Like therapy takes a very different turn if you use this language, these concepts.
Yes.
Because here, what we are looking at is the functional capacity of the person to live out his age-appropriate stage. The whole focus here is on living out age-appropriate stage.
Can we see this balance between relationships also, for example, husband-wife?
Yes.
Anima, animus, if there is a perfect balance or imbalance, and then...
Right. So what happens is in most common situation, you will have men with more animus and women with more anima. And the domination usually will go to the man. Now, let us say we have a separate situation where the man has relatively more anima and the woman has more animus. Then the woman becomes dominating, which is still okay because the pairing is still functional. Problem will arise when you have both with anima and both with animus. Because then, if both are with anima, then they will require some third person to take decisions. And often in that situation, you have some relative or some neighbor or some friend who is usually narcissistic, who loves to take decisions, who is a part of that circle. And if both of them have animus, then it's a difficult situation. Because then nobody is ready to submit. That's like two narcissistic people coming together. So, both with high anima is a problem situation. Now, one way out will be there are some couples, some pairs where both of them have high animus, but the man has extremely high animus. Those couples also survive. Because in most of such cases, the woman, apart from having very high animus, second, okay, so they require somebody with such high animus. And the second will be couples with multiple sexual orientations, where the woman may have high animus, man will have high anima, and both of them might have bisexual orientation, and they are able to live out because in a way they are a very good couple. Both can live out their bisexuality. That is one outcome at times. But we see a lot of animus collisions leading to separations. Any other questions?
Jung is rather too abstract and tough, and I had not read it well during my MDs.
This is one of the most difficult to understand because it looks strange to start with. Because we start questioning, are we in clinical psychology or are we in mythology and literature? And that everyone has. Is it clinical psychology at all? Many people ask that question. But this is one more thing good to know, to have in your basket. When you have multiple tools and perspectives, one more good thing to know. And completely different way of looking at things. So after Jung, when we come to Winnicott again, it will again be easy because he uses the same traditional language. Although the concepts are different, the language is the same, the paradigm is the same. Here the paradigm itself is different. It is not different concepts, it is the whole paradigm is different. The framework is different. So with this, we complete the archetypes, and next time we will complete personal unconscious, ego self-axis, and then we will go to these Jungian concepts, the core Jungian functional concepts. So at present, we are doing the model of the mind, which is structural part of it. And once we are done with the structural part of Jung, we do the functional part of it. And then lastly, we will go into, then we'll go into dream analysis, how Jung does it. And then we'll go into psychological tools and techniques that you can use, questionnaire, and therapy. How does Jungian therapy happen? So this is the classical way of Jungian therapy. Self-revelation, all these phases will go one by one when we come to it. So that is how we will go. But before that, we'll finish the model of the mind. Should we stop for the day?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.